Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the dceu Daily. I'm hoping to see the Batman for the second time tomorrow, because here in Cyprus, the Batman goes on general release on the 3rd of this month. So I'm so excited. As soon as I get home, if everything goes well, I will do a live spoiler review of the Batman. So look out for that. Very shortly, we're going to talk about Discovery and David Zaslav and what their takeover of Warner Media means for DC live action. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. We have got plenty of articles to read out and updates for you in the DC live action universe. Grab a cup of tea, press pause, relax. I'm going to be here for a while. Some people complain when I do long videos, but look, I'm not here to get 100,000 likes and views. I'm here to do my thing. And if you connect with me, that's great. If you don't, goodbye. So, the Warner Discovery merger came out of nowhere. It shocked everyone. It certainly shocked me. Now, when you look at it, it was pretty obvious something was going to go down eventually. AT&T didn't seem to have a clue how to run, an entertainment entity like Warner Brothers. I think that was the huge issue here, that they were from outside the industry. They weren't really welcomed from open arms. And you saw the reaction from the rest of the industry when they did Day and Date. They were correct to do Day and Date, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But what does the Warner Discovery merger mean for you and me, the simple DC live action fans? What does it mean for the Arrowverse fans? What's it mean for the CW that looks like it's pretty much up for sale? Uncertain times for CW fans as well, by the way. And if you're a fan of their content, especially their DC content, which seems to be a bit of a ghost town right now, if you ask me. Ever since Crisis on Infinite Earths, the excitement has kind of left the building, apart from Superman and Lois, which is an absolutely outstanding take on my man, Superman. But what does it mean for the DCEU? I believe things are going to change. I believe that Zaslav will come in, but as soon as it's official, Zaslav will announce his people. Zaslav will bring in the best people to run this brand new Warner Discovery company, which means it's probably going to have a very famous and very talented CEO. I'm predicting someone like Bob Iger. So this guy Zaslav is the real deal. This is the best thing that could have happened to Warner Brothers, and it stands like me, and DC stands like me and you as well. But changes are afoot. So once those huge announcements happen, you'll very quickly in the next few months find out the changes within DC live action, if any. So the things that what we want to know about is, will Zaslav restore the Snyderverse? I believe he will. I think one of the things is when you first take over a company, you want to look like you're there for your consumer and your customer. Because Warner Brothers, like it or not, and I've defended them over this, but they have a bad consumer relationship, especially with DC fans. And, there's no denying that. We can't pretend that everything in the garden is rosy. I believe that Ann Sarnoff has done some very, very good things. I think she's changed the company in certain ways. But let's be absolutely clear. She did not deal with the Zack Snyder stuff very well. And she certainly didn't deal with the Ray Fisher stuff very well. Jeff Johns and all the people involved with removing and unseating Snyder from the DCEU and the way they treated people on those Justice League reshoots should have just come out and apologized immediately. It would have been done. That would have been it, right? A root and branch, investigation. Then after that investigation, proper apologies. But oh no, they tried to bring their own people into the investigation. They tried to protect Jeff Johns. Now, I don't like some of the way that what's his name? Ray Fisher, and he just said his name, but Ray Fisher conducted himself. Some of the talk about Walter Hamada, it didn't sit well with me. But that doesn't mean that Fisher doesn't make good points. It's clear that Walter Hamada did try and throw Joss Whedon under the bus. I don't think Fisher is lying about any of it. It's just the way he was talking about it that just didn't sit well with me. But ultimately, Fisher had a point. So I would think already, without us knowing, because Zaslav's been in California for quite a while now, talking to people, that he's spoken to Nolan, that he's spoken to Ray Fisher, and he's spoken to Zack Snyder, and giving these people assurances. Very shortly, we will read an article from Screen Rant about Joe Manganiello changing his profile picture on Instagram to Deathstroke. I know I covered this the other day, but this is an article, and there's loads of articles to read today, and we're really going to get into it. And yes, there are articles about the Batman if you're interested as well. So who's safe at WB, and what content is safe in the DCEU? Is the multiverse strategy safe, and what's going to happen going forward? You see, it's all about evaluation, and the evaluation will be kind of the opening few months, I think, that Zaslav and his people will evaluate the plans for DC live action. So, for example, there's that, look, Black Adam is happening, right? Black Adam is happening. Now, he will look at The Flash. He will look at that film and decide, because what The Flash does is huge. So you may think, well, The Flash is this year. That can't be shelved or anything. Zaslav is going to have to look at that movie, because I think that's important. And he has to kind of measure it up and say, I don't know. So, you know, hold your breaths. Something huge may happen with The Flash. Because, as I say, Warner Brothers Pictures have been working very fast to try and get this stuff, to get their own way and go their own direction, right? Maybe with Snyder or without Snyder. It wouldn't surprise me if Zaslav's also spoken to Henry Cavill. He's one of the most important people to talk to. Listen, Zaslav's done his research. He knows how popular Snyder is. He knows how popular Cavill is. And he knows how popular Ben Affleck is. Ezra Miller laughing, scoffing at the thought that the Flash movie will be Ben Affleck's final turn. So, rather unlikely that Zaslav would shelve the Flash, unless he doesn't like the plans. You see, practically, the multiverse strategy is a very good idea, and there are no issues with it. But as I've said before, it's how you execute it. And the Flash movie is how they're going to execute this thing. So I think it's so utterly important that Zaslav looks at it and is happy with it. But big changes will happen. In terms of Matt Reeves' Earth 2, I don't think anything dramatic is going to happen there. I mean, Zaslav may look at the situation and say, you know what? This guy knows his stuff. The audience like him. Why don't we just, make his Earth the main Earth? They may do things like that. I would think that would be a mistake. I think Matt just wants to do his stuff. And commercially, what Matt is doing isn't going to work in the main Earth. So I don't actually think that's going to happen. But Matt Reeves is here to stay. Whatever the final Rotten Tomatoes score when all's said and done, whatever the final box office, he's here to stay, which is a good thing. I've already had one tweet telling me how much they enjoyed, of a person, how much they enjoyed the movie, an ordinary fan. And that's great, because the audience is what matters in all of this. And so, yes, changes will happen. Zaslav will restore the Snyderverse. Whether you like Snyder or not, his franchise, his arc, should have been finished. It would have been the cleanest way to deal with it, whether you like him as a studio head or you don't. What you don't do is what they did. What they did is the last thing you do in business and in entertainment. It was messy, it was dirty, and ultimately Snyder knew what they were planning, and he knew what he was going to do about it. He went on to Vero. He exposed them beautifully without being toxic. He was very clever. He got people on his side, and his plan worked. And he knew once people saw his Snyder Cut, his Justice League, they would want more. I think there's a stat now that the Snyder Cut was the top three most successful viewed streaming piece of content in 2021. So that tells you a lot about that. So the Snyderverse is successful to a point. It's not MCU successful, but a lot of people enjoy it. and a lot of important people like Snyder and what he did with the DCEU. Look, Snyder's very talented, but he's not for everyone. That's why you give him his own space, like you've given, Matt Reeves his own space. So that's going to happen. Now, what's more vital is this, what I'm going to talk about now. It's the dismantling of Warner Brothers Pictures. Warner Brothers Pictures is going to be dismantled. Let me explain to you the situation. You've been hearing Zaslav give some speeches saying he's looking forward to work with the people at Warner Brothers Pictures. The biggest mistake that AT&T did was come in and not dismantle Warner Brothers Pictures. They knew what was going on. They knew what Snyder was doing on Vero. They were getting so many letters and flowers sent to their tellers working in their customer services offices from Snyder's fans, because I was covering the whole thing at the time, as many of you remember. And so they knew what was going on at Warner Brothers Pictures. The whole lot of those people should have grabbed their heads and knocked them together or booted them out. Warner Brothers Pictures needs cleaning up. At the moment, the people at Warner Brothers Pictures, including Ann Sarnoff, are like a bunch of burglars trying to sneak out the house without being noticed and hoping nobody notices they've burgled the place. Now, I have the term propaganda merchant. It doesn't mean what they're saying isn't true. It's just the way they say it. That's what I don't take very kindly to. But it is true. Warner Brothers Pictures is a problem. And they are going to gut it. They will gut it because Zaslav knows he has to. AT&T made a huge mistake. So I don't know if this is going to be a straightaway situation or this is going to take time, because DC live action is so huge and they need to clean it up. Now, you don't want to go into a situation where you're aborting all the projects and you've got nothing to release. And also you don't want to take too long, but you don't want to rush this situation either. It's obvious that Walter Hamada, Ann Sarnoff and Jim Lee have made some very clever decisions. The appointment of James Gunn with the Suicide Squad universe was a good idea, and it's working for them. Cinematically, Suicide Squad didn't work, but now they realise from the HBO Max views, because that was day and date of the Suicide Squad, that Suicide Squad universe will work the best on streaming. So he's going to stay. That decision will stick. Whether James wants to work with Zaslav and Discovery, that's another thing. As long as they allow him to do what he wants, why not? So I expect him to remain. But changes will be made. They will gut Warner Brothers Pictures. I believe Henry Cavill will get his Superman movie and will get his cameos. Whether he's getting cameos now is a case in point. It depends if you trust the people at Warner Brothers Pictures right now to do the right things. Or if it's true that Supergirl is replacing Superman and that Batgirl is replacing Batman. Zaslav won't allow these things to stand, because Zaslav wants to create a good environment between Warner Discovery, his people, and the consumer, because this is the new ownership and they have to do that, because they know Warner Brothers consumer confidence and DC Live Action's consumer confidence is in the bin. It's as simple as that. So that's the thing. Public relations is a very important thing here. So he's going to have to gut WB Pictures. He's going to have to show the audience that he gets us. He gets what we want. He's already spoken about, putting, the three epic, iconic DC characters in movies. Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman. So Batman's getting a huge year this year, which is brilliant. And then Zaslav has to decide who's going to run DC Live Action. Will he keep Walter Hamada? It's interesting. He will evaluate that situation. Again, if nothing happens to these movies and they get released, it's all about how they do. And I'm sure David's opinion will be informed on the success of these movies. And he will look at how the public are reacting to these plans. But they know what the public want and don't want. So Zaslav is going to do everything in his power to please the audience. He's going to come in like Bob Iger did. He's going to put the right people in charge. And he's going to turn this studio around. But these things take time. So the Batman has this feel-good factor about it. Everyone is excited. Everyone loves Matt Reeves. Everyone likes Rob Pattinson. You know, Zoe Kravitz, blah, blah, blah. So there's no problem with that element of DC live action. People are going to love this film. It's huge. It's so faithful and has so much love for the source material. And that's how you please the fans. So huge decisions are coming for DC live action. Big changes are coming for Warner Brothers Pictures. So in the next few weeks, in the next few months, I'll be here. I'll be the best place, the best source to tell you how all this is going to work. Joe Manganiello makes his DCEU Deathstroke new profile pic. Just days from Batman's release, Joe Manganiello reignites calls for a Batfleck film by changing his Instagram profile pic to him as Deathstroke by TC Phillips of Screamland. Joe Manganiello has recently fanned the flames of fans hoping for a possible DCEU return by using an image of him as Deathstroke as his new Instagram profile pic. Manganiello, who made his comic book movie debut as Peter Parker's high school nemesis Flash Thompson in the Tobey Maguire-led Spider-Man in 2002, made a cameo appearance in 2016's Justice League as the brutal mercenary Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. When original Justice League director Zack Snyder released his own vision for the film with last year's director's cut, Manganiello's character was told the Dark Knight's secret identity by Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, revealing how his cameo was originally intended to lead into a much larger role opposite Ben Affleck's Batman. It has previously been reported that Manganiello's Deathstroke was then expected to continue in the DCEU and serve as the key antagonist in what would have been Ben Affleck's Batman solo film following the release of Justice League. Unfortunately for Manganiello, however, those plans were put on indefinite hold when Affleck stepped away from directing the project and was later replaced by director Matt Reeves when Affleck finally gave up the cow altogether in 2019, making way for Robert Pattinson's turn in the role. All hope of an Affleck-led Batman movie featuring Manganiello seemingly dissipated. More recently, however, Affleck has returned to the role of Batman via Ezra Miller's upcoming The Flash solo outing, sparking renewed calls for his own film, with fans already flooding social media with Make the Batfleck Movie hashtag. Manganiello is sure to have stoked excitement even further by setting his Instagram profile pic to an image of him as Deathstroke. Check out his new profile picture below. Of course, this is not the first time social media has inspired renewed demands for Warner Brothers to reconsider making Affleck's Batman film. Last year, Snyder himself began a fresh wave of fan calls by posting a new, never-before-seen images of Affleck next to the Batmobile used in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Just as those images saw eager Snyderverse fans become even more vocal than usual. Manganiello's latest move will no doubt also see them continue to petition for Warner Brothers to restore to the DCEU's original vision. Despite wishes of a clearly passionate fan base, Warner Brothers evidently have very different plans for Gotham's greatest detective moving forward. Not only is Reeves the Batman hitting theatres in just a matter of days, but from all accounts, the events of The Flash will ultimately result in Michael Keaton's Batman becoming the new face of the DCEU going forward. Perhaps Manganiello's Deathstroke may still have a role to play in the DCEU's future, but it seems increasingly unlikely he will get a chance to face off against Affleck's Bruce Wayne. But then again, with the multiverse in play, his return is impossible to definitely rule out. So this is interesting. So the author, T.C. Phillips, said that Warner Brothers are moving away, blah, blah, blah. Who are Warner Brothers? Warner Brothers are a bunch of people who are literally defunct. They literally have got a countdown timer to the end of their reign. So all their plans look kind of exciting, if you ask me. I don't agree with them moving away from the Snyderverse and not allowing Zack to finish what he started in some pocket universe. But their ideas look exciting. Yeah. Here's the problem. David Zaslav and Discovery are coming. That changes things. You can say it won't. I don't know what's in David's mind and what's in Discovery's mind. You know, they're running this new outfit, right? And they're looking to go back to the original Warner Brothers that the brothers started off. Obviously, you know, let's not have any misogyny or the stuff that used to go on in the old days, but you know what I mean. They're trying to build up that classic studio again. And they're taking this very seriously because this is how they're going to make money and become bigger than Disney. Because already this deal, when it's official, will make them bigger than Disney. And I mean, the stuff from Discovery they're going to have on their streaming platforms is sensational. So, you know, David Zaslav doesn't know the entertainment industry. He's come from Discovery, a very different place that does very different things. And he's accepted that, and that's why he's taking advice, and he will bring someone in to run this studio. It won't be Jason Kilar. Because Jason Kilar looks good, he says the right things, but unfortunately, Kilar made mistakes, and we will know that. More a businessman than someone that understands the industry. So he needs to, as I say, he needs to bring someone in like Bob Iger, and I believe that Zaslav is ambitious enough to bring someone in like him or Bob Iger. Wouldn't surprise me, and that would be something that I would celebrate after seeing what Iger did with Disney. But he also made mistakes with Star Wars. Let's not forget about that. I do feel that his hands were tied with Kathleen Kennedy being appointed as president of Lucasfilm. Another conversation for another time. But big things are happening. So although we're saying that Warner Brothers are going in a different direction, yes, they are. But they don't know if they're going to be in employment this time next week or whenever Zaslav and Discovery take over. So it is very, very credible why he's put that profile, that Deathstroke profile picture on his thing. Joe Manganiello has either done this to say, well, the Batman's been released, and I'm saying, I want to be part of this. Or he knows something. I would say he probably knows more than we do, obviously. But as I say, news about the Snyderverse will be coming in the next few months. Zoe Kravitz and Matt Reeves discuss whether Catwoman is bisexual in The Batman. Anyway, let's read on. Zoe Kravitz, who plays Selina Kyle, and director Matt Reeves talk about whether or not the new Catwoman in The Batman will be bisexual, by Andy, whose surname I could never pronounce. Zoe Kravitz and director Matt Reeves discuss whether or not the new Catwoman is bisexual in The Batman. Robert Pattinson is about to become the latest actor to don Batman's famous cape and cowl, as Warner Brothers is bringing its latest interpretation of The Dark Knight to the big screen, while Pattinson's iteration still has a long way to go before becoming the Batman fans know and love. The reboot franchise will focus on a younger Bruce Wayne during his second year fighting crime in Gotham City. The first installment will see Gotham's famous vigilante pit against a Zodiac-inspired version of the Riddler played by Paul Dano. As Reeves is reimagining the Batman mythology from page to screen, he's not reimagining it, he's actually taking it straight from the source material. Selina Kyle is one of many players that will be part of the journey. Portrayed by Kravitz, the Batman is approaching Selina similarly to other characters, as she has yet to become Catwoman at this point. From all the trailers and marketing that Warner Brothers has been rolling out for the Batman, it's clear that Selina will play an integral role in the franchise. The Batman's Catwoman comes 10 years after Anne Hathaway portrayed the anti-heroine in The Dark Knight Rises, the final installment in Christopher Nolan's DC trilogy, exploring the romance between her and Bruce. Even though the Batman will have a similar focus on Bruce and Selina, it appears Kravitz's iteration will include something from the mythology that past Catwomen haven't in their respective films. In an interview with Pedestrian TV, Kravitz and Reeves were asked whether or not the reboot is including Selina's canonical status as a bisexual woman. By the way, she hasn't always been bisexual, but it's like everything these people do. They grab certain elements of it and run with it and say it's canonical. Anyway, without going into spoilers, the outlet brought up a scene from the Batman between Selina and another female character that alludes to the former being bisexual, with the talent sharing the following. Kravitz: that's definitely the way I interpreted that they had some kind of romantic relationship. Reeves: and in terms of her relationship with Anika, I spoke to Zoe very early on, And one of the things that she said, which I loved, was that she's drawn to strays because she was a stray. And so she really wants to care for these strays because she doesn't want to be that way anymore. And Anika is like a stray, and she loves her. She actually represents this connection that she has to her mother, who she lost. Who was a stray who was a stray anymore? So I don't think we're meant to go directly in that way, but you can interpret that the way for sure. She has an intimacy with that character. It's a tremendous and deep caring for the character, more so than a sexual thing. But there was meant to be quite an intimate relationship between them. So basically, they're asked if Selena's bisexual, and you don't really get an answer, really, because Matt, as usual, has gone very deep with this connection to Anika, right? And where they care for each other, they're basically mates. And Selena's, caring for her and protecting her, right? But there's no hint of any romantic thing here. Maybe they were romantic in the past. I don't have a problem with Catwoman being bisexual because in elements of the source material, she is. And even if she wasn't, it's totally fine. But as usual, the media make a big thing of something that isn't a big thing. And, it's just part of the journey, I suppose. But it's not a big deal here. And it's basically two women who are friends. But if she's bisexual, that's perfectly fine. That's not a problem. But it's just the media trying to make a big thing out of everything. Despite not having the whole scene in context, it's still encouraging to hear that Batman is including Catwoman's bisexuality in one way or another. Based on their comments, it sounds like the Batman may not go too deep into Selena's sexuality. No, but at least addresses it in some capacity. The superhero comic book genre, especially in film, has only begun to include more LGBTQ plus characters in recent years. While the MCU and the DCEU still have room for improvement, the CW's Arrowverse franchise has been a solid destination for LGBTQ inclusivity, especially on Batwoman and Legends of Tomorrow. Yeah, how's that going for them? Not that there's anything wrong with being inclusive, as long as you give these characters the same treatment you give straight people, developing their characters, giving them great characters and casting great, talented, let's get it right, LGBTQ plus people talent. If it's just about optics, then it is wrong at the end of the day. Even though it's been clear for a while that Batman will be the start of a fresh new universe, seeing LGBTQ plus representation from the get-go is a solid move. But it's not much, is it? It's not really LGBTQ plus representation, really. It also helps Batman's latest live-action franchise stand out from the past film series, where they didn't include any queer characters at all. Well, it stands out anyway from the other interpretations. It didn't need to virtue signal to do that. Despite the reboot already teasing Batman and Catwoman's complicated dynamic, they're known for having an on and off romance in the comics. That leaves a door organically open for Reeves' universe to explore Selena with other partners, something that a potential Catwoman spin-off on HBO Max could do. Time will tell where Catwoman will go as the Batman gets ready to hit theatres finally. Well, it's not the greatest of articles, but I thought I'd read it out to you. Listen, you heard what Matt said, you heard what Zoe said. It isn't a big deal. If she was an out and proud bisexual woman, it wouldn't be a big deal, and I would celebrate it. It's just the virtue signalling that none of us really like. The Batman updated box office projections forecast massive opening. The latest box office projections for the Batman suggest the movie will reach at the very least 100 million in its first 3 days by Rachel Labonte of Screen Rant. The new box office projections for the Batman point towards a massive opening for the DC film, and Warner Brothers, the first major cinematic event of 2022, arrives this week with the Batman, the long-awaited reimagining of the iconic DC hero. Matt Reeves directs the gritty pick, which promises to be more of a crime drama in the vein of Seven than a spandex-covered superhero film. Right, can we get this clear? Because journalists and critics keep on saying, oh, it's not a superhero film. Batman isn't a fucking superhero, right? So of course it's not a superhero film, but he's a comic book hero character. That's what he is. And no matter how he's represented, that's what he'll always be. Robert Pattinson plays Bruce Wayne, and when the movie begins, he's in his second year of being Gotham's famed vigilante. A masked killer, Paul Dano's Riddler, is hunting the members of Gotham's elite, forcing Bruce to use his detective skills to save the day. Due to the Batman's highly anticipated nature, it already felt like a foregone conclusion that the movie would rake in the big bucks at the box office. The past year has been a mixed bag when it comes to how much movies made through theatres. The box office has recovered somewhat. It's pretty... Listen, go and look at Spider-Man No Way Home's box office and tell me it's only recovered somewhat. The box office has totally recovered. When the audience want to go and see something, they go and see it. There's no place for excuses anymore. But there are still genres and demographics that have yet to make a full return to normal figures. No, what you're saying is anything but superhero movies don't do well. That's just the environment we live in. The Batman has several things working in its favour, which is why the latest estimates have it scoring a pretty great opening. Per Variety, the current projections suggest that Batman could earn anything between 100 million and 125 million, which would make it the second film of the pandemic era to cross that three-figure milestone. Spider-Man No Way Home blew past that in December. However, there are even some experts who believe those numbers are quite low and say wouldn't be surprised if the Batman could actually open to something closer to 140 million. Now, this is great, but we were being told about 200 million domestic opening weekend. Listen, it's going to be interesting who comes here. If they know, you know, the mainstream audience now know it's 3 hours, it's dark, it's gritty, it's a horror movie. There's no question. Some people could be put off by that. Maybe that's why the projections are slightly shrunk. But it's still a great opening. We'll have to wait and see. Since the box office is still inching back to normalcy, any opening weekend gross for the Batman around those numbers would be cause for celebration. As mentioned before, only one film during the pandemic has managed to open to a figure over 100 million, and the Batman is very likely to be the second. This is spurred by its status as a superhero movie, Reeves' much hype new take on Bruce Wayne, and an eagerness to see Pattinson take on the role. Plus, as of Monday, the Batman has scored some very positive reviews from critics. Yeah, the reviews are great. I mean, as I say, there's always going to be dissenting voices, but, you know, the tomato score is solid, the reviews are solid, and I'm happy with that. Beyond its place in the DC universe, the Batman is an important release for Warner Brothers in 2021. The studio kept up a strategy where each new film debuted both in theatres and on HBO Max, something that was never going to happen with a Reeves movie. As a result, some movies almost certainly underperformed, though WB stood by the plan and confirmed other films brought in impressive streaming numbers. The Batman will be Warner Brothers' first theatrical-only movie since 2020. So a profitable debut will be exciting news for the studio. Stay tuned for more concrete numbers once the weekend gets underway. Yeah, I'm very fascinated by the numbers for this film. It's going to be interesting because I don't really have much respect for the mainstream audience, and I don't give them enough credit to think that they're going to come out in their droves, right, to give this film a 200 million, 220 million domestic opening weekend and sit there and watch a movie they know is 3 hours long nearly and is pretty much kind of a daunting horror movie, you know, a violent movie, a violent version of this Batman character. So I'm not giving them the credit. Let's see if I'm right or wrong. Why playing Batman and Bruce Wayne was easy for Robert Pattinson. In threading the line between Bruce Wayne and the Batman, Robert Pattinson found an easy and subtle way to connect the two personas by Rachel Abernathy of Screen Rant. Robert Pattinson opens up about what it made easy. Say that again. Robert Pattinson opens up about what it made it easy for him to play both Bruce Wayne and his caped alter ego. There's another reason it was easy for him to play Bruce Wayne, and I'm not going to spoil that for you. Thanks to unforeseen delays caused by the coronavirus pandemic, anticipation for the Batman has been steadily building for years now. At long last, the DC film will debut in theatres this week, and it so far looks like all that anticipation has cleared the way for success. The Batman has earned positive reviews from critics and box office projections, so it will open to 100 million at the very least. Directed by Matt Reeves, although if it went under 100 million, then some interesting kind of box office analysts will be saying not very nice things. The Batman centres on Bruce Wayne in his second year of fighting crime, As Gotham's vigilante in Pattinson and Reeves' hands, this Bruce is tortured by his demons, and they only get worse when a masked killer Paul Dano's Riddler begins targeting members of the city's elite. As Bruce aligns with allies like Jim Gordon, Jeffrey Wright, Catwoman, Zoe Kravitz, the Batman spirals into a detective story that by all accounts is darker than any previous iteration of the DC character. That is a definite. There's not a Batman film. A CBM has never been made in this light. This is the most accurate telling of a comic book character from the source material ever. The line between Bruce Wayne and Batman tends to vary from depiction to depiction, and with the Batman it will be quite thin. Speaking to Cinema Blend recently, Pattinson discussed how his Bruce performance melded into the Batman. Though it may seem like a difficult balance, he admitted he found an aspect of it to be easy. Pattinson said, "What made it easy is that he really hasn't figured out where Bruce ends and where Batman begins at this point in our telling of the story. And so sometimes it's Bruce seeping out of Batman, and there are a couple of scenes where I'm doing a kind of little subtle vocal changes. It's incredibly subtle a lot of times, but sometimes he's more in Bruce's register when he's Batman because he hasn't got full control of the delineation yet. As he's only in his second year of being Batman, it makes sense that Pattinson's Bruce would have a difficult time separating himself from his vigilante persona. Bruce is still putting together the Batman at the same time, that he hasn't put up clear boundaries for himself, hints that he could be losing his Bruce side to the Caped Crusader. Also, from a real-life perspective, Pattinson likely found it easy to bring this element to the character because he's still working out his performance himself. He's spoken at length about how difficult it was for him to nail the Batman voice, and if Bruce is struggling with his voice in the movie, then Pattinson can explain away any discrepancies on his part. There's no discrepancies, by the way. Now that Pattinson hasn't put in the work for Batman, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm actually reading this. These are professional journalists. Oh, sorry, I'm reading it wrong. Sorry, not that Pattinson hasn't put in the work. Sorry. For the Batman, he actively pursued this role before he was cast, and his co-stars have all praised his performance at length. The Batman truly does offer a fresh look at a frequently depicted character, and that's in large part because of what Pattinson has brought to the role. He just might have the potential to become fans' new favourite Batman, obviously. Audiences can see this updated Bruce Wayne and his caped alter ego on the big screen later this week, and isn't that exciting? So yeah, I think this is an interesting element of dual characters. So what Pattinson is saying here, he doesn't know where Bruce Wayne starts and the Batman ends. And I think this is a very interesting thing that they're talking about here when you see how much of the movie he's Batman and how much of the movie he's Bruce Wayne. Fortnite may not be the draw it used to be, and the people running Fortnite know that, so they're trying to put everything there to get the kids back interested in it. Mick, why are you talking about Fortnite? Because of this. Marvel and DC's next crossover could come from the last place fans expected. After a recent announcement from Marvel and Epic Games, a future DC Marvel Comics crossover in collaboration with Fortnite could become a reality. Wow. By Kevin Friedman of Screen Rant. Kevin Erdman of Screen Rant. With Marvel and DC Comics crossovers are seemingly a thing of the past, a surprising source may hold the key to allowing these beloved fictional universes to intersect. In the current era where Warner Brothers owns DC and Disney has Marvel, the Avengers and Justice League never cross paths, as they once did from time to time. However, both publishers have relationship with Epic Games to create crossovers between their universes, and the ever-popular Fortnite, now a new Marvel tie-in series, is in the works, and with it the possibility for a new Marvel-DC crossover. Marvel's relationship with Epic Games and Fortnite began in 2018, beginning with a limited-time game mode where players could equip the weapons of the Avengers and fight Thanos. However, in 2020 saw the arrival of the Nexus War, an entire Marvel-themed season of Fortnite featuring skins of popular heroes, culminating in a major battle with Galactus. The season also had a single-issue tie-in comic which served as a prelude. However, DC Comics and Fortnite have also had a great relationship with several in-game hero skins available for purchase, as well as Batman, Fortnite Zero Point, a 6-issue miniseries from DC writer Christos Gage, and Epic's Donald Mustard, with art by Riley Brown. Featuring Batman's arrival on Fortnite Island, the Dark Knight was depicted trying to escape the time loop of battles to make it back to Gotham through the game's interdimensional Zero Point. There was also a one-shot comic from the same writing duo and Scott Snyder featuring Batman teaming up with Dwayne Johnson's Fortnite character as they tried to prevent the Batman who laughs from coming to the island. Now, I don't play Fortnite, but my nieces and nephews do. And so this is actually really, really exciting, and we'll get into this in a minute. At the moment, Fortnite players can hop in a match and equip Spider-Man's web shoot as the season's biggest added feature, all while playing as various DC heroes, if they so choose. Clearly, Fortnite is the potential bridge between the two publishers, especially now that the new Marvel Fortnite series has been announced. Dubbed Fortnite X Marvel Zero War, this new series will be a 5-part adventure from the same writing duo as Batman Fortnite Zero Point, with artist Sergio Davila. With a vast interconnected multiverse established in prior stories, this new series is already a technical bridge between the worlds, and sows the seeds for a potential crossover in the near future. Seeing as how the last Marvel DC crossover was 2004's JLA Avengers from Kurt Busiek and George Perez, which almost didn't happen due to editorial disputes, a new crossover is still largely a long shot. That being said, if any entertainment entity has the pull to get both publishers to work together, it will be Epic Games. As unconventional as it may seem, Fortnite could be the vehicle to finally make a new crossover happen for fans of both universes. Fortnite has never stopped being popular since its release in 2017. Well, according to my nieces and nephews, it's not as popular as it once was. And its crossovers, maybe it's more popular with adults now than with kids. Maybe that's the thing. And its crossovers with Marvel and DC has resulted in its highest revenues to date. Wow, didn't know that. With even the tie-in comics being well received by fans. Putting Marvel and DC heroes together for a massive battle royale for the ages seems like it would be a win for all parties involved. Publishers, developers and fans alike, regardless of whether comic readers are fans of Fortnite or not, it may be one of the only feasible ways for a Marvel and DC Comics crossover to happen in the modern era. At the very least, here's hoping Gage and Mustard frame some DC Easter eggs when Fortnite X Marvel Zero War released this June. Well, great article there, but let me be clear. Fortnite is not the only feasible potential of a Marvel DC crossover. A live-action Marvel DC crossover is coming. I've been talking about this for a long time. It isn't going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen this year or next year or even next month. But it will happen eventually. The seeds are already being sowed publicly by people like James Gunn. It's going to happen. But you have to understand these are two companies that are big rivals. It will take a lot to get them together. But Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery, and it's going to land on David Zaslav's shoulders, Zaslav will take this opportunity and push for this opportunity. So a live action crossover is coming. What do I think about that? Inject it in my fucking veins. So Screen Rant have had a question and answer session with Jeffrey Wright and Paul Dano. So let's do this and see what they had to say. Screen Rant, I went to a recent Q&A with Matt Reeves and some of the cast, and he said it's scary to do a Batman movie. Did you feel that way? Was there anything scary about taking on your roles? And if so, what was it for? Paul Dano, maybe at the outset, I mean, the fans are so passionate, but so are we. I think sometimes those fears are a good driving force. Actually, you want to dig into the history and the iconography and the archetypes and all the energy that's there while charting our own path, which was most important for this film. And luckily, Matt and his script brought a true point of view and something that I haven't seen before in not only a Batman film, but in a superhero film. So scary, yes, but exciting. Jeffrey Wright, yeah, I have to agree with that. It really is. I was just saying to Paul earlier, this is our movie, the movie that we made. But there's a sense that it's not solely our movie, that it's the fans' movie. And they have this, don't mess with my stuff, man. Get it right, you know. There's such a personal relationship that people have with this franchise and these comics and these characters. You want to do justice to the characters, but also to that passion. So that's there. There's no question about it, but I understand why that is. This 80-year history of this franchise has allowed, ultimately now, I can say that again, this 80-year history of this franchise has allowed, ultimately now I can speak to now, it allows people to trust these characters. They know them. They can place their faith in them. And particularly at the time when you can't place your faith in everything, maybe some people have difficulty placing their faith in anything. They know where they can find themselves within these stories. I think they're really deeply important for that reason. I think because of that, people are able to find hope within them. It's not trivial stuff that comes with its responsibilities. Like Paul, I don't know if it's scary or if it's thrilling. I think it's thrilling. It's an exciting challenge to take on. Screen Rant. Matt talked about how the Batman has the potential to launch a Batverse. If you could watch or collaborate with any other Batman villain, the world's your oyster, who would you love to see? It's funny actually, when I get this question, I go blank and I don't know. There's so many, isn't there? And it's hard just to choose one. Jeffrey Wright, who would I love to see? You know, in the TV series, they had the Rogues Gallery that we know, but they also created some of their own villains. I think King Tut was newly created, and I don't see any reason why we should stop now. It's great to revisit the familiar, but I think it's also an exciting opportunity because the franchise continues to grow, continues to evolve, to actually come up with some new. Paul Dano, I agree, and I think that's a cool idea, but I'm genuinely curious how Matt Reeves would crack some of these other characters because he's reinventing them in such an interesting way. I think, like Rob has said, Court of Owls is one of my favourite of the comics, and there's another character I'd like to see Matt do, but I'm going to keep it a secret. Ooh, Paul, that's interesting. So that was a mini little interview there. I thought you might be interested in hearing. Very interesting. And interesting, I didn't realise that Dano had prior Batman knowledge and was actually a fan of Batman comics, which is really, really awesome. Now, this is an interesting one, by the way. The Batman budget reportedly doubled original cost estimates. The budget for the Batman has doubled from the initial estimates, now making it the third most expensive movie about the Caped Crusader ever made. By the way, I don't believe this is true, and I don't know why this has come out, but I think this is to put pressure on the movie when the box office starts developing and we're seeing how much it's making. I think this is a media created situation. I don't believe this. By Richard, think of Screen Rant. The Batman has doubled the budget than initially expected, ever since audiences got their first look at the film back at DC Fandom in 2020. Anticipation for the Batman has been extremely high and continues to grow as the release date draws nearer. Reviews have been very positive since the embargo dropped on February 28, 2022, with many drawing positive comparisons to The Dark Knight. There's no comparison. Box office estimates have begun rolling in, and while early tracking had the film possibly opening at the biggest for a Batman movie ever at around 180 million, now estimates are looking at a smaller yet still equally impressive 140 million. Now, this is interesting because these estimates have come out since the reviews and the Rotten Tomatoes score. That says a lot. Shows you how influenced the mainstream audience are with critics. Back in October 2021, it was reported the budget for the Batman was 100 million, which would make it cheaper than many modern superhero films, and that it could potentially make back its entire budget in its opening weekend. It appears those numbers were either false or the budget drastically ballooned. I think this is bullshit, but we'll carry on. In a recent report from Variety covering the Batman's box office potential, the publication revealed the budget for the film was 200 million. Well, I have to actually start to believe this now because Variety have a direct link with Warner Brothers. So it would seem that it did cost 200 million. Again, that's not, I mean, it's huge, but it's not, I mean, some films cost double that. So that is double the initial 100 million many believe. But I was surprised that a Batman movie would only cost 100 million anyway. I didn't see how that was possible, but I went with it because that's what I heard. 200 million puts the Batman as the third most expensive Batman-led film ever made, behind Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice and The Dark Knight Rises, which both had a budget of $250 million. Let's not forget The Dark Knight Rises. Didn't that make about $1 billion? And Zack Snyder's BVS made just under $1 billion. So, you know, they got their money back and they made a bit of a profit. They obviously wanted to make more from BVS. Part of the reason for the budget could be COVID-19 related costs, as the movie had not one but two delays. The first was the start of the pandemic, as production shut down on March the 14th, 2020, just 2 months after filming has started, and did not resume until September the 3rd, 2020. Filming was shortly paused again, with star Robert Pattinson testing positive for COVID-19, and the crew entered a 2-week quarantine period. Filming resumed on September 17, 2020, and filming officially wrapped in March 2021, 1 year after production had shut down and a whole year before the film's release. Even with a budget of $200 million, it is likely that Batman will make back its budget back domestically with little to no problem. Not only is it the only major film opening on March the 4th, but the following week has no major competition in theatres since Disney pulled the theatrical release of their Pixar film, Turning Red. You cowards! While March has many notable films like The Lost City and Everything Everywhere at Once, those films are unlikely to come anywhere close to harming the Batman's box office, obviously. Prospects leaving it as the only major studio tentpole for all of March, with its biggest competition not arriving until April with the release of Morbius. How much the Batman will make will be interesting to see, yet it appears the money was well spent just based on early word of mouth. Listen, I don't know how much this film is going to make or not make. It is interesting. It has no competition. It has no excuses because Spider-Man No Way Home made the money in a COVID pandemic. So there's no excuses. This film must make top dollar, and hopefully it will. Wonder Woman 1984 producer reflects on HBO Max release strategy. One Wonder Woman 1984 producer looks back on its HBO Max release and admits that while it was best for the film, it didn't work for the rest of 2021. By Rachel Labonte of Screen Rant. I really want to get my teeth into this because seeing this on Twitter really annoyed me. And I'll tell you why after the article. Well, over a year after its premiere, Wonder Woman 84 producer Charles Roven reflects on the superhero movie's unconventional release strategy. Released in December 2020, 1984, was the eagerly anticipated sequel to Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins' 2017 movie. Wonder Woman shifting from World War I to the glitz of the 80s, Wonder Woman 1984 found Gadot's Dinah Prince dealing with two new villains and an ancient stone that could grant anyone any wish. Overall reception to the sequel wasn't as positive as it was for the first film. Facts. Yet that wasn't enough to prevent Warner Bros. From greenlighting Wonder Woman 3 not long after its debut. It clearly did excellent business on HBO Max and got them lots of subs. No question, this was a huge film. And of course they're going to greenlight the next movie. But Patty Jenkins shouldn't be the director. We'll get into it. Adding to Wonder Woman 1984's woes was its release after it moved from 2019 to 2020. Now this is an interesting point. And we'll get to this. We'll get to this. The coronavirus pandemic would become a far mightier villain than anyone else Dinah had ever faced. Warner Bros. Postponed Wonder Woman 1984 multiple times throughout the year before settling on a late December date. Later, Warner Bros. Shocked the industry when it announced Wonder Woman 84 would debut simultaneously on streaming service HBO Max. It was a surprising decision for a superhero movie expected to make millions at the box office. It was the peak of the pandemic. There was no other choice. And it would only be the first WB later, and it wouldn't be the first. It wouldn't only be the first. WB later gave every single 2021 movie dual HBO Max and the theatrical releases to combat the pandemic. Just think of the cojones on Stanky and Keelar. They wanted to use a Wonder Woman movie as a test case to do day and date. And they got their evidence right and their results. And they did it. Now well removed from the experience, Wonder Woman 1984 producer Charles Roven has reflected on the streaming plan in a new interview with LA Times. Roven, who's also produced 2021 release, The Suicide Squad, reiterated that the streaming plan was one of the best options available for Wonder Woman 84. However, looking back on WB's entire 2021, he doesn't think it was a successful strategy. Well, actually, Charles, it was a successful strategy. It was the only strategy. They would have made less money as a company if they just released in theatres. Yeah, it would have upheld theatres a little bit more. But as a company, they wouldn't have made as much as they made by having these things also on HBO Max. Any idiot can tell you that, and this idiot is telling you that. Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot and myself were asked if we would support a day-and-date release on Wonder Woman 1984 when we were in the height of COVID and we had already held the movie for over a year. We were really facing the option of either coming out simultaneously on HBO Max in December of 2020 or waiting until December of 2021. We agreed to do it, but we were not told that would be what all of 2021 was going to be like. And I have to say that I think they themselves, Warner Brothers, know that didn't work. I think it did work. There's some pretty great movies, and I think I produced one of the best ones, which was James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. You see, he's trying to use the day and date as an excuse for Suicide Squad's failure in the box office. This is what all this is about. And its box office was minuscule compared to what it did on HBO Max. I think that was a missed opportunity. No. That film may have made a few more bucks in theatres, but the Suicide Squad hasn't got the cojones to make enough. That's clear now. That's why they're concentrating Gunn's, little franchise, dceu franchise, on streaming, because that's where it's best served. That option seems to have gone away, and not just because the filmmakers didn't like it, but because I think that the studios themselves realised that they were putting a cap on their revenues. No. There's no cap on the revenue if you've got day and date in each country, whether you can rent it on Amazon Prime here in Cyprus or watch it on HBO Max in America and watch it in movie theatres if you want. That's not a cap on your revenue. The cap on the revenue, my friend, was because it was the peak of the pandemic. No way would Spider-Man have been the hit that it is if it hadn't been shared with streaming. Right, if it had been shared with streaming, listen to me closely. Charles, you're within the industry. I like you. You're a well-spoken guy. You're an intelligent man. But this is dumb talk. Spider-Man No Way Home, right, would have made what it would have made. Now, if we were in the peak of the pandemic, they would have had no choice either to delay it. But Sony don't even have a streaming service. So it's stupid talk. But one way or another, that company would have made big on Spider-Man No Way Home. So it's silly talk. All you do by day and date, you take elements of the money, the profits from cinemas, and you spread it out to one of your other places, right, which is streaming. So you're going to make what you're going to make. So he's actually talking utter nonsense here. Warner Brothers stood by its decision to release Wonder Woman 1984 and all of its 2021 movies on streaming simultaneously. But the outside picture does seem to suggest it wasn't an incredible profitable plan. There were no profitable plans. We were in the heights of a pandemic. Though movies likely performed very well on HBO Max, their box office grosses suffered as a result because of the pandemic. Some films like Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong found some love through theatres, but there's no question that streaming cut into their potential because of the pandemic. Other projects like King Richard and Raven's The Suicide Squad seriously underperformed because of the pandemic. In the case of Wonder Woman 84, it definitely made less than it would have before the pandemic, but streaming might not have been entirely to blame. No, it's not. It only earned $163.3 million worldwide. For comparison's sake, the 2017 Wonder Woman grossed $818 million. Wonder Woman 84 was definitely a hit on streaming, but it's important to remember that it was also released at a time when movie theatre attendance was incredibly low. Exactly, because of the pandemic. Though the streaming strategy maybe didn't work out in the long run, they had no choice. It at least ensured Wonder Woman 84 could have finally been seen by audiences. Exactly. Roven seems to understand that, even if he wishes for a different outcome all around. We can't change a global pandemic, Charles, so you lot in Hollywood can keep on making money. But anyway, let's get into this. Because Warner Brothers and Patty Jenkins basically shot themselves in the foot. This film was going to be released in 2019. Now, this is interesting because I do call Grace Randolph a bullshitter. She came out with a video just before they postponed it, and she spoke about Wonder Woman 84 being a vehicle for a multiverse strategy, talking about a decision being made that actually creates a Flashpoint scenario. It's not Flashpoint, but she makes a decision that changes the timeline in Wonder Woman 84. That's what Grace was saying, right? Once Grace had posted this video, I think a few months later, they delayed the movie to 2020. Patty Jenkins saying they wanted to make this movie perfect. In 2020, when she finished shooting, she said they could have made the release date, the original release date. It wasn't 2020. In 2019, when she finished reshooting the movie, right, she said they still could have made the release date. So what was going on? Because basically, if they released in 2019, the COVID pandemic and day and date wouldn't have been an issue. Well, let me explain to you what happened. Grace Randolph found out something, and they shit themselves because they saw the reaction on the internet. People didn't want a Flashpoint type of story in a Wonder Woman movie. So they had to dismantle everything they planned. That was probably a better movie, by the way. And basically, they went and did the Wonder Woman 84 they made. Patty Jenkins is a director with mediocre ability. She's solid, she knows where to point the camera, and she had very little to do with the first Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 84 is a mediocre, poor CBM. And the pandemic and day and date has nothing to do with the reason that a lot of people poked holes in the plot and found it rather underwhelming. And if it was up to me, she would never get to do a Wonder Woman picture again. She's never picked up a Wonder Woman comic. She thinks the source material was Linda Carter's television show that was pretty much there for us to watch her things bump up and down as she used to run, right? Let's be honest. Sorry about that, just being honest. That's what she thinks the source material of Wonder Woman should be. Patty Jenkins should no longer be involved with the Wonder Woman franchise. And I believe that it's not yet a definite that she will be. DC is a brilliant comic book world that's been around since 1938. The introduction to Detective Comics, the introduction to Superman #1. It's been huge for all these years, and it deserves the greatest live-action treatment. Well, whether that's films like Matt Reeves' The Batman, standalone movies, or part of a huge franchise, it deserves the best people working on it. So my hope for the future, and now Discovery and Zaslav are coming with Warner Discovery, is that they bring the best people to work on the best franchise. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Nick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Forgot my words there, so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tonight where we will be live, so don't miss it. Until then, goodbye. Au revoir. Auf Wiedersehen.